I recently unboxed the new Sivga Phoenix, a $250 dynamic driver headphone. I was pretty impressed with its build and sound quality, particularly for the price. I also have been reviewing the much-hyped Vokyl Erupt crowd-funded gaming headphone that claimed it was audiophile quality. If you have not been following my Erupt videos, here's a quick breakdown. The Erupt is currently $400 and available for pre-order on the Vokyl website. The Erupt stock earpads and cables are some of the worst I have ever used of all the headphones I have ever tried, which is a lot. The out-of-the-box signature is nowhere close to what Vokyl and its reviewer collaborators promised. You will need to spend at least another $80 to $100 for Dakoni earpads to get the Erupt to sound closer to what Vokyl promised, and the overall sound quality of the Erupt is average to slightly above average at best after you've pumped more money into the earpads. In short, the Vokyl Erupt is a pair of headphones that needed more time, research, and development, and to be blunt, the Vokyl team was less than honest with its backers. The Sivga Phoenix does not need an earpad change or new cables. Out of the box, it sounds fairly close to what Sivga promised, and I'd be happy to say that it does exactly what Sivga claimed. So, how do these two headphones compare? As the title of this video will indicate, if you paid for the Erupt, you likely did not get the quality you were expecting. In this test, I will be comparing the Sivga Phoenix to the Vokyl Erupt in their best configurations, to give the drivers of each headphone a fair comparison. This means that the Erupt are being used with $80 Dakoni fenestrated sheepskin earpads. I did not use the hard audio cable for the Erupt since we are trying to keep costs to a minimum. The standard cable works fine, though that's about as much as I can say for them. The Phoenix needs no upgrades whatsoever. Both headphones were plugged into an AB switch. That switch was connected to my RME 80i2 DAC, a neutral, powerful, and noiseless amp DAC. I played my test playlist from Amazon Music HD. I volume matched to the best of my ability. I do not think people have the patience to listen to me provide overly detailed explanations of how each headphone performs with each track I used. Consequently, I will summarize my findings and provide examples where necessary. The Phoenix has noticeably more sub-bass presence than the Vokyl Erupt. It is an obvious change when you go back and forth between these headphones. With songs like Mountains by Hans Zimmer, the sub-bass rumble sounds practically anemic on the Erupt compared to the Phoenix. The Phoenix's presentation is not overblown or bloated. Rather, it is an interesting combination of slower transients, longer delay, and more emphasis in the bass region overall. The Erupt has faster bass transients and less bass emphasis. On the other hand, the Erupt has a lazy amount of bass slam. For example, in Conquer by Overwork, there is a drum that sounds clearer on both headphones, but the Phoenix provides the distinct sound of that drum being hit, whereas the Erupt sounds quite different, almost muffled. Repeated tests showed that the Phoenix has a mid-bass clarity and emphasis that the Erupt simply lacks. Going back and forth through numerous tracks by Overwork, Kodo, a band which uses a mixture of Japanese drums, and soundtrack music, I was able to reach one unmistakable conclusion. The Phoenix renders drums with more impact, more energy, more clarity, and more natural timbre than the Erupt. If you listen to the song Tomo by Kodo, you will hear at least 3 different types of drums. There is a very large drum, a medium drum, and small drums. Each has its own unique sound. The Phoenix made all the drums sound closer, as if you were only a few rows away from the stage. The Erupt, no matter how loudly I listened, made the drums sound distant, recessed, and veiled. Separation of multiple bass instruments, such as different types of drums, was crystal clear on the Phoenix. Play the song Bird Island from Kodo. You'll hear a different set of drums on the right ear cup than from the left ear cup. You'll hear a flute dead center. You'll hear clapping. You'll hear bells. Everything is separated, delineated. Nothing melts or becomes muddy. Switching to the Erupt, on the other hand, and that separation of instruments is practically gone. I heard all drums dead center, one on top of the other. Transients was much faster on the Erupt. This means that the drum strikes lasted longer on the Phoenix. But there was something not quite on timbre when listening to the Erupt. Everything, and I mean everything, sounded one step behind what it should have been. The bells sounded a little blunted when they should have cut right through the mix. The different drums melded into one sound signature, which was pleasant enough, but certainly not accurate. At some parts of the song, I could hear separation of instruments, but not as clearly as I did on the Phoenix. The overall experience was starkly different between the two headphones. There were occasions when the Erupt had slightly better instrument separation and placement. However, in exchange, I heard a more cloudy, muffled, veiled, less detailed, and less textured bass. Sub-bass and mid-bass melded. The Phoenix has a stronger bass emphasis by a big margin. It's quite impressive actually, considering that the Phoenix is an open-back headphone. The Phoenix has good separation between sub-bass and mid-bass. There is more mid-bass slam and more natural timbre and decay. Overall, even though the Erupt did provide slightly better instrument separation on some occasions, it was so inconsistent and frankly so out of the ordinary for that particular headphone that I might as well just conclude that the Erupt simply cannot really differentiate multiple bass instruments, whereas the Sivga Phoenix can and does so much more consistently. On the Phoenix, vocals are clear and have excellent sparkle, especially in hip-hop songs. In comparison, the Erupt sounds shouty. In the song Pure Water, as I tried the volume match, it seemed that the Erupt had a 1 kHz push that made the primary vocalist sound a little harsh. At lower volumes, the harshness is much reduced, but then you're listening to a song at below normal volume. Of course, the Phoenix has a sense of sparkle that may be fatiguing to some. The sparkle on the Erupt is more blunted. The Erupt's shouty nature seemed problematic with hip-hop songs. In pop, rock, and acoustic songs, the vocals were not quite as shouty, though that 1 kHz peak was still there. The Phoenix is able to faithfully recreate the nuances in a vocalist's voice. Grainy voices like Orla Gartland sound grainy. Sibilance that is recorded into the song is present without alteration. The Erupt, on the other hand, smooths out the vocals in comparison. It's not a significant difference always, but noticeable in an A/B test. Sibilance on the Erupt is slightly rolled off, and grain in vocals is mostly gone. The Erupt's shouty vocals were more controlled in songs from Haim and Vic and Gab, but still noticeable. Separation of multiple vocalists was slightly better on the Erupt. The Erupt's faster instrument transients resulted in vocals appearing a smidge clearer when compared to the Phoenix, on occasion, and not particularly consistently. Mind you, whatever differences there were rather slight. Male vocals sound a bit tinny on the Erupt. It's that weird 1 kHz peak that I keep hearing on songs featuring male vocals. Going back and forth between headphones, the Phoenix just provides a more natural male vocal presentation. Some people will enjoy the Erupt's rendition of vocals, especially those who prefer to hear vocals with a bit of emphasis. However, I do not think it is accurate. The Phoenix had more treble energy to impart than the Erupt. Brass and horns were slightly rolled off on the Erupt. The Phoenix, in contrast, provided just a tiny bit more emphasis that cut through the other instruments. It is evident that treble instruments are more gently portrayed on the Erupt than on the Phoenix. It is possible that the Phoenix has a slight treble emphasis. On the other hand, the Erupt has a treble roll-off. Those who are treble sensitive might be more pleased with the Erupt, but at the cost of true timbre and accurate presentation. I must emphasize that the Phoenix is not a harsh-sounding headphone, far from it actually. By way of explanation, I will remind you that the Beyerdynamic DT1770 has a harsh sound signature, and so does the Final Audio Sonorous 6, and even the Fostex TH500RP. The Phoenix is not like any of those headphones. It is merely a slight pep in the treble step, so to speak. Nor is the Erupt a boring-sounding headphone where treble is concerned. It does present treble instruments, but not with the energy that some might prefer. Separation of multiple instruments was better on the Phoenix than on the Erupt. I played Scherzo for X-Wings, Flight from the City, Duel of the Fates, Bim Bam Smash, and a few other orchestral pieces to try to figure out what was going on. On every occasion, the Phoenix had cleaner presentation. Instruments did not have hard separation, nothing remotely close to what you might hear on the HD800S or Vokyl Clear, but you could still pick out individual instruments or group sets depending on the recording. The Erupt, on the other hand, had a muddy presentation. It was almost as if instruments were stacked on top of each other like a layered cake. This made it difficult to hear timbre of some instruments because another instrument's sound would be overpowering. Sometimes the differences were significant and other times marginal, but the presentation was always different between these two headphones. Instruments like the double bass was immediately audible on the Phoenix, whereas the Erupt had that tonality buried somewhere within that layer cake mix. The Erupt with the Taconi earpads has above average soundstage. The Phoenix with its stock earpads has above average soundstage. The difference here is in imaging and placement. The Phoenix has a unique way of placing instruments in different areas. Some instruments appear in the left and some on the right and some in the center. If recorded into the song, the Phoenix will likely show you where the instruments are. The Erupt, on the other hand, prefers to keep everything dead center in comparison to the Phoenix, and this is the strange part. You see, the Erupt has instrument separation and object placement. It does just fine in that regard. But when you compare to a headphone like the Phoenix, you can immediately hear a difference. What you thought was good just moments before will sound subpar when you compare it to the Phoenix. Compared to gaming headphones, the Erupt does have good separation and placement and soundstage, but that's such a low bar that we should not even bother using that comparison. The Erupt is better in these things compared to some so-called audiophile headphones. The Cos Porter Pro and the KPH30i come to mind. Those two headphones could not even come close to matching the soundstage of the Erupt, but those are $40 headphones, and who's surprised by that result? Well, nor is the Erupt good at instrument separation, verticality, soundstage, and overall presentation when compared to the Sony MDR MA100, another $40 headphone that has been discontinued for many years. Instrument separation is not everything. Placement is not particularly important. Plenty of people will not like that sort of stuff. But I cannot help but underscore that when a company sells its products and promises that the product will do a particular thing, I think we are entitled to expect delivery on that promise. Here, with the Erupt, you get okay soundstage, you get okay instrument separation, you get some instrument placement and imaging. But for the money you pay for these things, you expect them to do a hell of a lot better than the $40 Sony discontinued headphones. This is probably an unfair comparison, seeing as we had to upgrade the Erupt's earpads. It should be no surprise that the Taconi earpads are more comfortable than the stock Phoenix earpads. Some people are going to dislike the Phoenix because of its clamping force and smaller earpads, and they would likely prefer the Erupt because the Erupt has significantly less clamping force and much more plush earpads. Well, the Taconi earpads anyway. But the weight of the two headphones is also of some concern. The Phoenix is on the lighter side of these two headphones. Both the Phoenix and the Erupt have a balanced sound signature, and this doesn't mean neutral. But the way these headphones present the sound is vastly different. To test my hypothesis, I asked a friend to listen to the two headphones and played a song that she had not heard before. I used exactly the same testing methodology as in the test I just spoke of. I played the song Uproar by Lil Wayne. I let her volume match. I let her listen for 30 seconds on the Phoenix. Then I had her switch to the Erupt and replayed the song. She had a quizzical look on her face, and she asked me the following question, quote, "Is this the same song?" I asked her what she meant by that. She said that the song sounded much different on the Erupt. When prompted to describe the difference, she thought about it for a few seconds and said that the Erupt sounded tinny. Her comments properly encapsulated how I heard these two headphones. I cannot tell you that the Erupt is a terrible headphone. I do not think that is really the case. I said in the unboxing video that this headphone is a mixed bag. I hear the potential of these drivers, but that's not enough. Potential is not worth the current price tag of $400. What bothers me is the blatant misrepresentations Vokyl made. I would love to blame some reviewers for the hype behind the Erupt, but I have to be fair. They could only review the headphones they were sent. And according to Vokyl, through their own admission in an October 2019 Indiegogo update post, they changed the sound signature of the Erupt after reviews of the headphones had already been submitted. Vokyl sent reviewers headphones with a different baffle design and Taconi earpads. We will never know what that prototype headphone sounded like because Vokyl changed the sound. Vokyl claims they had to do it because of cost and the 3D printed baffle, that if you change the baffle, then you have to change the pads. But that excuse doesn't really make sense. Either it was the cost or it was the baffle redesign. Regardless, since the sound was in fact affected, it was incumbent upon Vokyl to send the redesigned headphones out to reviewers for another review and comparison to the original prototype. But that did not happen. It bothers me that a lot of people were led to give Vokyl money based upon a review of headphones that were never released. That's a practical fact. Imagine paying for a meal described in the menu and then what you get is something noticeably different. Instead of the chicken you ordered, you get duck. And rather than red wine, you get lemonade. And that's how I feel about the Erupt. I am unimpressed by being forced to make alterations to the headphones just to get a sound closer to what was promised. Nobody should be required to buy new ear pads. This is, however, what you must do with the Erupt. It is frustrating to see that Vokyl essentially admitted that the unperforated stock ear pads is not, quote, a great representation of what we wanted to create. This is an understatement. It's like a suspect telling the police, I may have slightly stabbed a man, when there's a dead body. I think you can easily tell where I'm going with this. The Erupt is a terrible value proposition. In fact, it must be one of the worst examples of investment or value in recent years. The price of the Erupt alone is off-putting. $400 for a pair of headphones with average sound overall and terrible accessories. Its much vaunted microphones are much ado about nothing. The only consolation prize you get from the Erupt is that they have a unique and sturdy build. Unless, of course, you're among those people who received units that had broken headbands or dead drivers. How can I begin to provide an excuse for the Erupt? How can I justify their ridiculous price in the face of unimpeachable facts? The fact that the sound signature is nowhere close to what we were promised. That the Vokyl team made changes without giving us the option to withdraw our money. That the earpads are so awful that nobody will be satisfied with them. That the cables are among the cheapest I have ever seen of any headphone at any price. I cannot recommend these headphones at $400. But even if you find these headphones for cheaper, the Sivga Phoenix is a far better choice, I think. Think of it. The Phoenix is an open-back headphone that has the bass response of a closed-back headphone. Its bass is deeper, more natural, more hard-hitting than the Erupts. The Phoenix has more natural mids, with at least as good separation of multiple instruments and vocalists as the Erupt does. The treble on the Phoenix is also more accurate than what we get on the Erupt. Build quality on the Phoenix is excellent. The stock Phoenix cable is quite good. The earpads and clamping force on the Phoenix will be uncomfortable for some, but comfort is exceedingly personal. The point is, when you spend $250 on the Phoenix, that's all you really need to spend on these headphones. Either you like the sound and fit, or you don't. On the Erupt, you have to buy other things to get the headphones to perform and feel remotely close to what a premium-priced headphone should be. And that is a slap in the face. I will not tell you that the Erupt sounds worse than the Phoenix. I think you have to judge that for yourself. The Erupt sounds pleasant, but is nothing exceptional. It is about average in every respect. The problem is that you are being asked to spend premium money on a not premium result. The Phoenix is, however, an exceptional headphone. When you listen to these headphones on bassy tracks, you'll scratch your head and wonder how it is possible for an open-back headphone to sound like the Phoenix sounds. The only significant negative of the Phoenix is the fit. Some people will love the sound, but not how the headphones fit on their heads. In my opinion, the Phoenix remained one of the best sub-$300 options around, and frankly, I think these headphones will give some pricier headphones a run for their money. Anyone looking for a headphone with sub-bass and mid-bass emphasis, but with clear mids and a slight push in the treble should consider the Phoenix. And people should think twice before putting down money for the Vokyl Erupt.